The 2026 edition of World Sustainable Development Summit, or WSDS, the flagship event of the Energy and Resources Institute, or TERI, will mark the Silver Jubilee of the summit this week. The 25th edition of the milestone event will be held in New Delhi from the 25th to the 27th of February at the Taj Palace under the umbrella theme Parivartan, which means transformation. Now, here are some excerpts of messages that some of the global experts on environment and sustainability have sent for this year's WSDS. We leave you with that.
Leadership. The world sorely needs strong leadership now. We have an imperative to act, given the magnitude of the risks, and we have a great opportunity to act, given the new growth and development story that is in our hands if we invest wisely and well. And that opportunity will be taken if the leaders of the world can explain clearly, on the basis of their own understanding, how big is the risk from inaction and how big is the opportunity from action. My new book, The Growth Story of the 21st Century, tries to set out that growth story. We've had a very good recent document, which is on Viksit Bharat and net zero from Niti Aayog. We've had a very good book emerging just now from Amitabh Kant and Siddharth Sinha, also setting out the opportunities for this new growth model. So that leadership is coming, and it's coming from India in a very strong way. And the WSDS is itself an embodiment of that leadership.
We meet at a decisive moment. The first global stocktake reminds us that we are far off track. Emissions must fall by 43% by 2030. Yet, current commitment will deliver only 2%. Of the 169 SDG targets, only 13% are on track. These are not just statistics, they are a call to transformation. As the 2030 Agenda declares, we are determined to take the bold and transformative steps needed to shift the world onto a sustainable path. Transformation is not incremental adjustment. It is, in the words of the United Nations Sustainability Analysis, a change that alters the fundamental attributes of a system, its incentives, institutions, and value system. Forests sit at the very heart of that transformation. Forests are our natural climate infrastructure. They regulate water, stabilize soils, buffer extreme weathers, and absorb carbon. But they are also economic and social systems. Nature and people are too often treated as externalities in economic decision-making. That must change.
I think looking ahead at the future, what we really need to achieve the SDGs and go beyond, I think, is to really take a much more integrated and comprehensive view rather than a siloed approach to the SDGs. Of course, we need political commitment and financial resources. But much more than that, I think we need to start looking at these things as completely integrated, and we need to start measuring outcomes rather than inputs and being more data-driven in our decisions. To give you an example of SDG 2 and 3, we need to start looking at nutrition and health together and to take a life course approach, including prevention and health promotion. So if we look at nutrition across the life course, and automatically then we start monitoring both the health and nutrition parameters from adolescents to young women, to pregnant women, to young children, and all the way into aging, we will not only improve the efficiencies in the program design, but we will also start identifying the barriers and sometimes the local constraints to achieving health and well-being.
The climate crisis is a health crisis, which means health must guide decisions on climate and development. Policies on climate, health, and development must align with what protects lives and strengthens communities. Strong health systems are central to this work. And yet, the health systems that people rely on to protect them from these threats are themselves affected by climate change and contribute to it. Through the Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate and Health, WHO is supporting more than 100 countries to build climate-resilient and climate-friendly health systems. We're helping them to transform how health systems are planned, financed, and managed in a changing climate.
Industry is a force for good, must act for positive change, and one of the big positive change which we need to bring about is to see how do we protect the entire planet from the climate risk and how do we protect the vulnerable from the impacts of the climate risk. In this, the industry is already spearheading many of the elements which will make a big difference. The three key ones in them is our ability to plan and deliver on the climate change risk driven mainly by carbon and carbon emissions. How do we become green, renewable, and how do we travel to net zero? I think there are many sectors, some of them hard to abate, but if we work together as one team and we collaborate, we will find solutions beyond the usual. The second element, of course, is to reduce the resource intensity by greater focus on circularity, and that is something which companies will have to do increasingly to ensure that the circularity goals lead to resource intensity which brings back our use of various elements of the earth within the planetary boundaries as we know it.
Climate action and sustainable development cannot exist in silos and therefore cannot be pursued through the separate policy tracks. At my department, the UNDESA, we are working very hard to accelerate the climate and SDG synergies. Our analysis and intergovernmental work show that the policy coherence acts as a force multiplier, delivering significantly greater impact. The Climate and SDG Synergies conferences and reports have supported the countries in advancing integrated approaches. The 7th Synergies Conference will be held in Bangkok in June 2026, ahead of the high-level political forum on sustainable development. It will contribute directly to policy deliberations. Second, we must amplify the diverse voices. Inclusive decision-making is non-negotiable. The perspectives and the realities of the small island developing states, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and other stakeholders must inform the global action. Their voices are essential and critical for shaping and reshaping effective policies on sustainable development, adaptation, resilience, and climate justice.
The theme of this summit, transformations, is exactly what the Global Stocktake and the Sustainable Development Goals Review demand of us. We should no longer treat sustainable development, social inequality, climate action, and nature protection and restoration as separate agendas. We must treat them as one integrated agenda. The past year has been a genuine stress test. It showed us that progress cannot be taken for granted. Leadership today is about courage. It's about turning ambition into action, even when conditions are difficult. We have seen much of what you could call quiet leadership recently, working hard behind the scenes to sharpen strategies. That internal work is vital. But to achieve real transformation and to overcome the headwinds, we need loud leadership. Loud leaders come from across society with the confidence to engage actively and ambitiously in the policy processes that can shape, influence, and determine our future.
In nature, nothing exists alone. Our actions have consequences, and so too does our inaction. The consequences of inaction are no longer abstract projections. They are lived realities, particularly in the global south, where climate volatility is intensifying and developmental pathways are increasingly climate constrained. So when we speak about leadership in this moment, it cannot be limited to vision or carefully drafted declarations alone. Leadership has to be operational. It has to show up in the systems we build, the standards we strengthen, the accountabilities we enforce, and the partnerships that we sustain. Vera was established almost 20 years ago during a period when international systems were not mobilizing climate finance at the scale or speed required. Carbon markets emerged in the space not as a replacement for public action, but as a mechanism to accelerate it. Today, high-integrity carbon markets remain one of the few tools capable of driving meaningful decarbonization while channeling finance directly to communities on the front lines of climate change. At the same time, leadership cannot be defined by governance reform alone. It must be reflected in real outcomes, such as in India, where more than 4,000 farmers are participating in a Vera-certified mahogany plantation project that has planted over 3 million trees through an intercropping model. Farmers who were once dependent on small and vulnerable land holdings are now diversifying their income, earning both agricultural production and carbon credits, with 70% of carbon revenues flowing directly to them. Yields have strengthened, soil health has improved, resilience has increased. This is climate mitigation. This is also climate adaptation, and that is climate leadership in practice.